Welcome to Unreal Gems. In this video, we are going to take a look at how to localize dialogue in Unreal Engine. You can be tempted to use asset localization for this task, but that is not the proper way. So let's take a look at how to do it right. Okay, so we are back in the engine and we are going to take a look at how we can localize the dialogue system in Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine has the dialogue system which eases the burden of creating dialogue using Unreal Engine. So for example, it has several special types of assets which are related to dialogue. So in this case, we have a masculine robot and a feminine robot. With their blueprints, we are going to see how we have implemented everything. We take a look at the viewport. We can see a box collision, which will be in charge of detecting when the player comes near the small robot. So it will fire when we overlap the collision box. In this case, we can see that also several types of assets have been used. For example, dialogue voices, which provide information about the talker. So in this case, if we could take a look, we can see information about the gender, which in this case is masculine, and the plurality, which in this case is singular. So it would be plural, for example, for a crowd. Next, we are going to take a look at the second NPC, in this case the female robot. You can take a look at its voice, dialogue voice contents, which is again feminine and singular. Again, if we would direct this dialogue to a crowd, it would be instead of singular, plural. But in this case, again, the conversation is between two robots. So let's leave it at that. You can take a look at all the dialogue voices. There is also one for the Stackobot, which again, I'm not gonna show because it is the same. Remember that this has information about the talkers that are going to intervene in a dialogue. If you want to create the thumbnails that you can see in the dialogue voices, it is quite easy. Let's create another one. Let's go to Sounds, Dialogue Voice, and let's go ahead and right click. You are going to go to Asset Actions and there Capture Thumbnail. With that, with anything that you have on the viewport, it will be captured and it will be put in the asset thumbnail. So with that, it is quite easy to identify each voice because you can see that I have pictures of the robots, so it is quite easy. Next, we are going to have the dialogue waves. In this case, the dialogue wave provides a context. So the speaker directs the dialogue at a person, in this case, the small robot. Usually they have a sound wave as their content, so you can also include the sound. So it provides context information and also the sound that is going to be played. With that, you have everything you need to start using dialogue in Unreal Engine. So in this case, you can see that the sound wave is quite easy to choose. And then we have the spoken text, which in this case, it's going to be the subtitles that a sound wave has in this dialogue. So in this case, it says, hey, I have something to tell you. Next, you have the voice actor direction, which is a way of telling the localizer that in this case, the robot is confident and the voice actor is going to have some guidelines. It is also cool that we can use a subtitle override for effort sounds or, for example, when we don't understand a language, so we can force the subtitles to be only on one language and not be localized. So that's pretty cool. Next, we have the sound waves, which are used in the dialogue waves. They are quite complex, but for our case, we are just going to take a look at the subtitles. You see that you can modify a lot of things about the sound, like looping or volume, but we are looking for spoken text. In this case, we don't need it because we have also written the subtitles in the dialogue wave. So in this case, we don't need that spoken text. Next, you can see that the sound has a localization key format. So it has a hash that we will need later whenever we are using the import dialog menu, so that we can properly name the dubbed, the translated sounds, so that Unreal knows what language they are in, what dialogue line they correspond to, etc., etc., etc. In this case, we have the sound cues, which can also be used with the dialogue player to be able to reproduce a dialogue wave. So you only need the dialogue player and connect it to the output, and you can see that the context is loaded from the dialogue wave, and everything will be the same, more or less the same as with the sound wave. The thing here is that you can use it to, whenever the sound is finished playing, you can, for example, play a response like we see in the blueprint. So in this case, you can see that first the NPC is going to talk, and then the small robot, Stackobot, is going to answer. We only can do that if we know when the first sound is over, when the first dialogue line is over. So we need to take that into account and use sound cues. Next, we can see that in the Stackobot, we have a voice and a gender, just to be able to create the dialogue contexts whenever we need to. And that's pretty much it. With that, we can use the NPC to talk to the Stackobot, and in the begin overlap, you can see that it starts playing the dialogue, and in the end overlap, it's going to stop playing the sounds so dialogues don't overlap. The simpler way to play dialogue is this one, which is the feminine NPC, the second NPC. It's going to just play its dialogue line, which is directed at the BP bot. So you can see that it creates a dialogue context that needs to match the dialogue wave. That's important. If not, we can have dragons. It may not play or whatever. So just remember that. So on the begin overlap is going to take the voice of the NPC, the voice of the Stackobot. It's going to create a dialogue context, and then it's going to use the greeting dialogue wave to play the dialogue at a location. In this case, it's going to be the actor location, so the NPC location, which is what we want. So with that, the play dialogue at location will play the dialogue as intended, and you are going to be able to see it. So this is it for the second NPC, which is the simpler way of doing this. You can see that it is quite easy. We just have greeting, which is a dialogue wave, and the voice, and with that, we can do it. Just remember to match the speaker and which robot is directed at, because if you don't match the dialogue wave, it will not work. So just be careful with that, because it's quite easy to get them mixed up and it won't play. With that, we can go ahead and take a look at the first NPC, which is the more complex example. In this case, we have remember the sound cue for the dialogue wave instead of directly the dialogue. So we are going to be able to do some more complex things. So on the begin overlap, the first thing that we are going to do is bind us to the on audio finished event for the audio component, which is the component in our blueprint that is going to be in charge of reproducing the sound cues. So in this case, we will bind ourselves to the on sound finished to be able to play something when the sound finishes. So in this case, you can see that we are going to play the response. So first things first are setting the sound. So in this case, we are going to set the sound to the sound cue of the greeting. That will set the sound on the component, will not play anything, and next we are going to play it. So we are going to play the greeting of the NPC. Whenever that finishes playing, it's going to fire the response event that we have bind ourselves to. With that, we are also going to set the sound which comes from the StackObot response, and then we are going to play it. Just in case, as I mentioned earlier, in the end overlap, we are going to stop both sounds, either on the audio component of the NPC or the audio component of the bot. So sounds don't overlap if we walk away and then come back in the collision box, which is going to be chaotic and it is going to be really unpleasant. So with this, we have all that we need to be able to localize our dialogue. So you have seen examples of dialogue voices for talker information, the dialogue waves for the subtitles and the sound waves, and all of that. So one may think that using asset localization for the sound waves is the proper way of localizing dialogue in Unreal, but this is not true. That is going to be like a mess, and Unreal has a system in place for us to be able to localize easily dialogue if we are using the Unreal Engine system. So we are going to take advantage of that in the localization dashboard. So first things first, we need to include the path in which we can find the dialogue. So we just need to do it in the gather packages step. So it is quite easy. We add another wildcard, and with that we are going to set that folder, just content, StackObot, audio, dialogue. We select the folder. With that, the localization dashboard is going to be able to find the subtitles and also the sound waves. But we need to do something else first. We need to choose a raw audio path, which is going to be where we are going to place the dubbed files with the translated audio. So we need to choose, I have already created one in the project folder. In there, we are going to put our dubbed sound waves. Next, we also need to pay attention to the imported dialog folder. This is where the engine is going to place the localized assets. So we need to mimic the localization folder structure. So if we just leave it like this, it's going to place everything in the localization folder imported dialog. But we want to keep it as with the other assets. So we are going to choose that path so that everything fits together really nice and everything is localized in the same way. So you can see that in the Lion folder, usually we have the ESES and then StackObot, and it mimics the rest of the project. So what we have done is just make it so that the dialogue is also going to keep the folder structure from the content folder. That's pretty simple. So with that, we are ready to use the localization dashboard to find first the subtitle text, which we are going to be able to translate, and second, the sound waves related to the dialogue. So let's first gather text, which is going to find the text for the subtitles. With that, we can see that new words have popped up, and we are going to use the translation editor to be able to translate everything. So everything that we see here comes from the subtitles that we used in the dialogue waves. So you can see that they have popped up both phrases from the NPCs and from the StackObot. I'm going to go through the translation quickly because it was quite boring and the video is already getting long. So you can see something curious here, which is that the "let me think about it" appears twice. This is due to the fact that in the dialogue wave, I've added two dialogue contexts, and since they are directed to different people, the translation in other languages can change. So that's the reason for appearing twice in the translation picker. This is quite important because we may need to switch something in the translation depending on gender or plurals or something like that. And you can see here that it is not the case, but it could be. So Unreal will pop it twice, and that's pretty much it. So we can now count words, and we are going to see that our translations are going to go to 100%. We may think that we are done, but remember that we have sound waves. So there are two buttons left, like the export script one and the import dialog one. We are going to first use the export script because that's what it's going to find the sound waves, and it's going to give us information so that we can dub them and then import them using the import dialog. So we can click OK. And right now we need to go ahead and go to the localization folder, in which we could find remember in other episodes, we could find the POs. Well, now a game dialog CSV is going to pop up with a lot of information about the dialogue. First, it's going to tell us which is the dialogue line, so with the speaker. And next, we are going to also have the dialogue line, so the subtitles. And we can also see the hash. Remember that hash that I talked about in before? Well, now is where we need it. And last but not least, we have the is recorded flag, which as we record the dubs, we are going to have to change and use true instead of false. So I have dubbed everything. So I'm going to put true in all of them. And with that, we now only need to rename the files, the WAP files with the dialogue translated, and we will be done. Unreal is going to be able, thanks to the hash, to find those files and put them in the proper places so that everything works well and we can use the translations apart from the subtitles in the sounds. So we need to save, of course, the dialogue. Just in case you are missing the voice actor direction, remember that it only appears in the English version of the CSV. So you just need to tell that to the localization company that is going to dub your dialogue, so that they may find the voice actor direction, and that's pretty much it. Next, we need to deal with the raw audio folder, because remember that was where we told Unreal Engine that the dialogue was gonna be, the localized dialogue. You can see that I have created a es-es folder. You need to do this manually. Unreal does not do this for you. And you can place, if you have other languages, other folders with the other languages, in which you need to copy the WAP files. And as you can see, I have already renamed two, but let's do one more with the respuesta, so the answer of the Stackobot in Spanish. So you can see that I pasted the hash so that Unreal knows which dialogue line we have. Remember to get it from the proper CSV just in case. I already copied it before, so I just need to paste it. And now every WAP file is going to have the proper contents. And Unreal is going to know which languages are in which WAP files. So we just need to go back to the localization dashboard and go to the import dialog button. And it is going to place everything in the imported dialog folder, which is going to have the localized sound waves. So let's go ahead and click on the import dialog. It's quite simple, as you can see. We click on it, and with everything changed, it's going to know that we have already translated the dubbed the sound waves. And if you take a look now at the Lion folder, you can see that the audio folder has popped up with a dialog folder. And inside that dialog folder, you can see the dialog waves and the dialog and the sound waves. So you can see that it has already done everything on its own, and everything is ready now to test our translations. You can switch settings as we have done before using the editor preferences. I was missing it. Let's go ahead and dock it also because we are going to use it a lot. Let's go to the region and language and change from Spanish to English. Let's first start in English. Let's see how everything sounds in English. Hey, I have something to tell you. Let me think about it.
Hey, over here. I have something for you.
Well, you can see that everything is working properly. We can see the subtitles. We can hear the sounds. Let's now test if everything is translated. The subtitles and also the sounds. Let's first compile, as I have told many times that you need to do, because if not, things may not work. Let's change the language to Spanish. Let's go ahead and launch the game and see what happens. Tengo algo que decirte. Déjame pensarlo.
Hey, aquí. Tengo algo para ti.
You can see that everything is working properly. If by any chance you have problems with the subtitles not popping up, go ahead and look in the project settings for the subtitles section. There you will find the subtitles enabled box, which if it is unticked, go ahead and tick it so that subtitles pop up. You could also have problems with the subtitle font being too small. You can also change that. Another problem that can pop up is not having a sound wave associated to the dialogue context, to the dialogue wave. In that case, the subtitles will not reproduce. You will reproduce the dialogue, but the subtitles will not pop up and you won't see them. Remember that you need to have a sound wave associated to the dialogue context so that subtitles work. Okay, so let's do a quick summary of several of the concepts in the localization of the Unreal Engine dialogue system. First of all, we have, remember, dialogue voices, which have information related to the talker, like for example, if it's masculine or feminine, and if it's one entity or more. So next we have the dialogue waves, which have information related to the dialogue, in this case, who talks to who and the context, and for example, the associated sounds to that dialogue. So as you can see, sound waves will have that. Next, we have in the dialogue wave the subtitles, which the translation picker and the localization dashboard is going to identify. Last but not least, we have the sounds, which are the sound waves, which have the dialogue sound, and they will also be detected by the localization system. Using the import dialog button, we can bring in external assets with the dubs, the translations of our dialogues. So with that, Unreal Engine will be able to on its own identify what lines of dialogue it needs to bring from the external dubs using those CSV files that we mentioned before and the hashes. So as you can see, this system is quite powerful and does a lot of things for us. We don't need to devise a complex folder structure or, for example, script some other way of bringing that dialogue in. So let's be quick and efficient and use the tools that Unreal Engine provides us. If you want to know more about the dialogue system, please go ahead and leave a comment and I will look into it. So that's it for this video. You can see that localizing dialogue is not as easy as it looks in Unreal Engine, but once you know all the tricks that I have told you in this video, I think it can be quite easy. If you found the video useful, go ahead, like and subscribe. We'll see each other in the next videos.